Hello guys, Hornet May 13 here, back with another video, this time for UFC Fight Night, Lewis versus Texeira. This is a pretty bad one. Not very good fights. Joking, it's probably the best one of the year. The problem is that the best one of the year when it comes to UFC Fight Nights isn't that amazing, but this is a pretty good Fight Night card. The first fight on the card, which we're obviously going to get into, it's pretty much two of the guys who you'd expect to be on the early prelims on a pay-per-view, but it's Taco Tukos versus Junior Taffa, the inferior Taffa brother. Now this fight, Tukos is kind of just a little Greek ball of fat that just comes in and tries to have like a slobber knocker kind of fight where he just lands unskilled, no technique overhands and tries to take your head off basically. And Taffa, he's kind of got that typical Aborigine kind of fat man lumbering power kind of style, a bit like a Tai Tuivasa. He just tries to go in there and do a similar thing to that, except he kind of does have a bit more of a fundamental boxing style. He has a little bit more technique. He looks like he's maybe trained MMA before. Tukos is just kind of like a typical brawler who likes to go in there and just make it dirty and try and get success if he can. He's not going to use his skill. He knows that he ain't going to outskill you in there, so he just uses his pure aggression to try and overwhelm you. I just think it comes down to the fact that Junior Taffa also has that kind of dog in him and that kind of rough and tough style, but he's just a bit more skilled. So I do expect Junior Taffa to get the victory here. I can see a knockout possibly, but I've got a feeling both these guys are very tough, and it could be one of those typical heavier weight class brawl, kind of no technique, a bit sloppy. I've just got a feeling it's going to be one of those typical heavyweight decision kind of fights / light heavyweight. You know, it's just like one of those typical low level, higher weight class fights. And I think Taffa's going to get the nod here, but I think it's just going to be because of the fact that he's going to land the more eye catching, better technique, more effective shots. Basically, I don't think it's going to be a good fight. On any pay-per-view card, this wouldn't even make the prelims. It'd be on the early prelims. And I think it's going to be a pretty boring one, but I've got a feeling that Taffa's going to edge it just by landing the more effective shots. And I think Tukos is going to gas as well late. Moving on. Fight number 2 on the main card. Vitor Petrino versus Austin Lane. Vitor Petrino, decent fighter. He's kind of got that well-rounded style. He's long. He likes to throw kicks a lot. He also throws a lot of left hands. You know, he's quite effective at keeping distance as well, using his length. Austin Lane just looks like autistic Chris Curtis. He looks genuinely like Chris Curtis, but with more Down syndrome. Even though Chris Curtis does have a lot of Down syndrome, with him being like a wrestling fan at the age of 40. But it's a good matchup. I feel like both guys are quite low level, but they're not low level if you're looking at the first fight on this card. You know, they're still decent. You know, they're not heavyweights, so they still like have to be half good to be in the UFC. But I think that Austin Lane's just got the more explosivity, and I think Petrino's got the better technique. And it's basically one of two things. If it's going to be a decision, Petrino's going to win, and if it's going to be a knockout, it's probably going to be Lane. I'm actually going to go for the knockout here. I'm going to be optimistic and hope that we get like a bit of an explosion in this fight because we need it. And I think Lane's going to get the win here, just using his explosivity, probably close the distance at some point using his athleticism, explode into range, and I can just see him landing one on the chin of Petrino because he tends to throw a lot of kicks, and that can lead to you dropping your hands a bit, putting that chin in the air. And I can see him going for some kind of body or leg kick and then just getting caught as he kind of gets timed by a Lane and just gets flatlined. That's how I see this fight going. If Lane's to win, he's gonna have to get a knockout, and I see Lane maybe first round getting kept at range by Petrino, maybe getting a bit frustrated, and then I see Lane starting to, you know, slowly close that distance by the end of the first, and then in the second, I think that Petrino's going to get a bit more comfortable, thinking, oh, I've got this guy's number, and then I just see him going for some kind of more of a bit of a adventurous maybe move, start maybe trying to throw some kind of like body kick, or even trying to maybe double up on a jab and then land another kick to the head or something along them lines. And I see him getting timed by Lane and getting flatlined. It'll be quite entertaining if that does happen. I'm going with that prediction just simply because of the fact that I prefer that than another lacklustre decision. But I also do think Lane is good. I do think he's got some skill in MMA. I don't think he's a total like bottom feeder. I think he can get some wins at higher level in the division. I just don't think he's ever going to be top 10 material. But I see him getting a knockout here. Moving on. Fight number 3 on the main card. Nate Landwehr versus Steve Garcia. Now this fight I actually think is underrated, man. Steve Garcia, he likes to throw the shots. Sexy Mexy's a good fighter, man. He's beaten some decent names in the past. He's pretty explosive for a lower level, like featherweight. He's, you know, a lot of featherweights don't have much pop, but Steve Garcia's shown that he can hurt people in there and put them out. I think Nate Landwehr is just too brave for his own good. He just doesn't care about the danger coming at him. Like, he just goes in there like Full Metal Jacket style, just private pal, like going in there going and then he gets caught with shots that he just didn't need to get caught with, man. He reminds me of like one of these like old like military guys that suffered a lot of PTSD and just kind of the hearing thoughts and voices in the head and they're getting flashbacks, Vietnam flashbacks. He kind of reminds me of that guy in Full Metal Jacket, the one, you know, the one at the end where the Japanese sniper's there and he goes in and gets shot and he's like, ugh. He reminds me of that guy in Full Metal Jacket, the blonde guy, but he's a good fighter, man. I do like to watch Nate Landwehr, but I just think Steve Garcia is going to hurt him, man. If you've got that style of a Nate Landwehr, this is going to be like the Julian Erosa fight. You all remember when Julian Erosa finished Nate Landwehr? I see a similar kind of ending to this fight. I think Landwehr's going to go in there aggressive, but he's going to be fighting a guy who's just got that extra danger level, and he's just going to get put out, man. I mean, fair enough, Landwehr's lasted against big power punchers like Dan Ige, but Dan Ige is more technical when he lands his shots. You know, he likes to pick that perfect shot and he'll put you out cold. Whereas I feel like a Steve Garcia is just going to match the energy of a Landwehr and be chaotic, but he's also got that extra pop in his shots to a Nate Landwehr. I feel like he's just a bit more powerful, a bit more substance to his shots. And I think if they're having a full-on brawl, you've got to go with the guy with the more power and the more danger and the more finishing potential. I think Steve Garcia is going to get a finish. I think it's going to be the fight of the night. I don't think it's going to come in the first. I think the second round, it's going to be kind of Nate Landwehr getting into that war with him, and he's going to be landing shots. He's probably going to be doubling up on his shots as well. He's going to be landing the jab, then he's going to be throwing a hook. And I can see him getting caught with an uppercut, funnily enough, because Steve Garcia does have a good uppercut. And he also has a bit of a stockier, shorter frame. And I feel like Landwehr tends to, you know, throw a lot of uncompacted shots. Like, he ain't throwing straight shots, he often throws hooks, and he often like he doubles up, like I say, on his shots, and he ain't afraid to go in the pocket and trade, whereas a lot of fighters are more defensively minded. And I feel like he's going to get caught with an uppercut, get stumbled, and then I think he's going to get overwhelmed by Garcia. Volume, heavy shot, probably going to get caught against the fence after the uppercut rocks him, and then I can see Garcia just piling on the pressure, possibly landing some elbows, landing a few of those nasty 12-6s on the floor as well. And I think a ground and pound stoppage late in the second is going to be the ending to this fight. Sorry for that. Moving on. Fight number 4 on the main card. Very good one. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Oh, I've been carried away there. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, the greatest of all time. I have to put that in there. I think Wonderboy, you know, he's going to be retiring soon. I've got to show my respect. One of my favourite fighters of all time. I haven't been able to talk to him a lot on my channel because he hasn't fought a lot, but Wonderboy is one of my all-time favourites. Anyway, versus Gabriel Bonfim. Now, this fight, I think, is an absolute disgrace, to be honest with you, by the UFC. Wonderboy is one of the legends of the welterweight division, and they're throwing him in there not only against a Bonfim brother, but the inferior Bonfim brother. Ismail is a lot better fighter, in my opinion. I can't believe they're doing this to Wonderboy at this stage, a guy who doesn't really have a name in the division. You know, I know he's had a bit of hype in the past. I believe it was Gabriel who beat Terence McKinney with that amazing flying knee early in his UFC career. I believe that was his debut, which was hilarious because I remember that was the time when Terence McKinney came out in the Brazilian shorts and he just got flatlined. That was funny as fuck. But he's fighting a legend here in Wonderboy, and I just don't feel like he's earned that. Like, Wonderboy should be in a fight with a Colby, you know, someone who's going to bring a bit of excitement. I know that people say Colby's just like trying to feed off people who are older, but I'd still want that fight for a Wonderboy over a Gabriel, a young up-and-coming hungry guy. I just think it's not a really good way to treat one of your legends, and I'll be honest with you, I think Wonderboy, he's shot, man, at this point. I love Wonderboy, but I think he's going to get beaten up here. Bonfim, even though I don't think he's going to ever be a champion or even a top 5, top 10 contender, I just think, like, when you get these kind of style matchups and there's the hungry guy, especially from these Brazilian favelas, you know, they've got a bit of that edge to them. It's a bit like, it reminds me when the Fed, who was it? When the Fed Lerone Murphy to when the Fed Edson Barboza to Lerone Murphy, like, they're giving him a fight where the name's not there, so there's no real reason for him to take that fight, but they're kind of putting the pressure on and they're putting it on a fight night card. And at least that one was a main event for Edson, but this one isn't even a main event for Wonderboy. You know, it's just like not even a co-main on a fight night. I mean, it's disgusting, man, putting Wonderboy a third fight on a fight night against a no-name. But I think in this case, it's going to be a lot more brutal of an ending than what Edson had in that fight against Lerone. He just got outpointed by Lerone, points master Murphy. And I feel like in this fight, Wonderboy's going to get hurt, man. He already got knocked out by Buckley in his last fight. He's fighting a guy with a similar build to Buckley. Not the same style, because Bonfim's more of a striker than a wrestler. But I think Bonfim's just going to be too good, man. I think he's going to really bully Wonderboy in the clinch. I feel like he's going to land knees. He's going to land loads of vicious leg kicks when they're on the feet in striking range. And I can see Bonfim also just trying to, like, clinch up against the fence and land body shots, land elbows to the face, but then probably also mixing that jiu-jitsu and maybe go for a sweep. I could see him getting Wonderboy down that way because he's not really a wrestler, but he's got good sweeps and he's a good jiu-jitsu practitioner. I could see him getting a sub here, man. I could see Wonderboy getting choked out here, and that'd be really upsetting for me. That'd actually be more upsetting than watching him get knocked out by Buckley. Seeing Wonderboy just get choked out in his last fight in the UFC on a third fight down on a fight night card. But that's really how I see this going, to be honest, unfortunately. I just think Bonfim, he's looked really good when he's fought people who haven't got, like, a good grappling base. Like, whenever he fights someone who's a bit more well-rounded, he looks like he's in trouble. But as we saw against McKinney, when he fights a striker, a rangy kind of guy, it's just the right kind of matchup for him. Just like, as I said in the previous fight, when you get these stockier, shorter guys, they just tend to match up well with these strikers who keep at range because the chin's there up for grabs. They've got the lower centre of gravity, so they can trip them. They can get a bit better, a bit more of a base when they're going for takedowns or they're in a fence situation. They can keep the balance better. They can kind of switch things up. Look at the Charles Oliveira versus Ilya fight when Charles was going for the takedown, lost his balance and then got taken down, and he just got mauled from that point. I just feel like these shorter guys, they tend to have good chances in them grappling situations, and I feel like he's going to get a sub here. That's my sneaky suspicion. So my final prediction in this is going to be a third round rear naked choke for Gabriel Bonfim over Wonderboy, and I think it's going to come by just overwhelming him with loads of wearing against the cage, body knees, loads of elbows as well, because Wonderboy tends to, even though he's got that karate style, he tends to kind of like to keep it clean, whereas Bonfim will be more of a brutal, scrappy kind of guy, and he'll go just to be brutally elbowing him to the face, whereas Wonderboy will be trying to get it clean, like get out of that clinch so he can land some kicks and he can land his body shots and he can throw the spinning attacks and all that goofy shit he does, what we love him for. Whereas Phil Bonfim will get down and dirty and rough him up in the clinch. So I'm going with a Bonfim third round rear naked choke after getting Wonderboy exhausted against the fence and tripping him and getting the back. Moving on to fight the co-main on this card. Calvin Kattar versus Steve Gar. So yeah, now I've just realised that I made a mistake in my earlier fight. It was actually against Morgan Charrier for Nate Landwehr. So I'm very embarrassed about that. But I do think that Morgan Charrier will actually beat Nate Landwehr. So I'm actually really not knowing how I'm going to word this now because I've already made the prediction. So that's a dream fight in the future. So if we ever get Steve Garcia versus Nate Landwehr, I've already done my prediction for that. That was random as fuck. But no, I think Steve Garcia. I think Steve Garcia. I don't know why I'm talking about him still. He's facing Calvin Kattar. I think Morgan Charrier will beat Nate Landwehr. Let's be honest, Nate Landwehr, most fights these days, is probably going to get beat. But unlike in my prediction for the Steve Garcia dream fight, I think he's probably going to do it by just outpointing Landwehr. So it'll just be a boring points decision for Charrier, similar to the Nathaniel Wood fight, but a reverse and Charrier gets the nod. So moving on, Steve Garcia, who I picked earlier on to beat Nate Landwehr in that imaginary fight, what I've made up in my own mind. Steve Garcia versus Calvin Boston Strong Kattar. Now I think Calvin Kattar, he's probably past his best at this point. He's had some good moments in his career, like getting injured against Arnold Allen in the main event and ruining my Margot's career. Thanks for that, Calvin. But no, all jokes aside, he has had some good moments. The war against Max Holloway, where he just got beaten up for 5 rounds. Basically, I'm getting at the fact I think Calvin Kattar's always been overrated. He's shit. And he's fighting Steve Garcia, who I've already picked to beat Nate Landwehr. I actually think that Calvin Kattar, believe it or not, might be an even shitter fighter at this point than Nate Landwehr. So it's pretty easy now to predict this one in this video because I've already given you my breakdown for a similar kind of guy, a brawler who's short. I think that Steve Garcia is probably going to just beat the shit out of him. I actually think it'll be a similar kind of fight to how I described his dream made-up fight against Nate. I think he's probably just going to use his scrappy, more volume, more danger factor, and he's just going to land the more powerful, more damaging shots. I can see him landing a lot of, like I said in my prediction, if he'd have fought Nate, a lot of elbows, a lot of just more powerful hooks, whereas I feel like Calvin Kattar's just going to be landing the more thudding shots possibly, but not with the pop in him to actually do some damage and hurt him and maybe rock him. I feel like if there's anyone getting rocked and finished in this fight, it'll be Calvin Kattar. I just feel like he hasn't got the same explosivity he used to have. I feel like he's had a lot of beatings in his career. Even the Arnold Allen fight that only went a round before he had to get stopped early in the first for an injury, I feel like he was getting beaten up there pretty badly, people forget, and then he got destroyed by Max Holloway. He's had time out, he even got beat up by Aljamain Sterling, which is, in hindsight, quite embarrassing. If Aljamain Sterling wins a fight, you're usually not coming out with any injuries, but Calvin actually got pretty beat up in that fight. Usually an Aljamain Sterling victory involves just hugging someone. So yeah, I think Steve Garcia is just going to beat him up. I don't think he'll finish Calvin though. I think unlike Nate Landwehr, I do think Calvin's still got the chin for it. Nate Landwehr's been finished a lot in his career, even, going back to the beginning of his career. Calvin's always been quite durable. So I'm going with a decision for Steve Garcia here. I don't think it's going to be a signature Steve Garcia first round finish, but I feel like he's going to work his way up the rankings and beat a pretty big name in the division. Finally, moving on to the main event of the evening. Derek, my balls are hot Lewis versus Taliesin, weirdly shaped, long torso Texeira. Yeah, Taliesin Texeira is literally built like the poo off South Park. Remember the Christmas shit? Pooh, whatever it was called. The Father Christmas shit from South Park. He's built like that for some reason. He has like a weird long torso and barely any legs. And it's going to be a good test for him because Derek Lewis is talking a lot of shit in fight week. He's saying he's going to knock out the GOAT, Tom Aspinall. He's saying that he's, coming for the belt. I'll be honest with you guys, I think Taliesin Texeira is probably the last hope we've got for a possible big, high hype contender in the heavyweight division, because I think he's the only guy I can actually see coming up who could become something. I did think originally it was what's he called? Lanky kickboxer guy. What was he called? Fucking, I've already forgot his name because he was shit. oh, what was he called? The lanky kickboxer guy who's just gone to the Grandpa Fight League. You know what I'm talking about anyway, that guy, the guy who got a first round KO in his debut and then got embarrassed in his second fight against Waldo Cortez Acosta. So yeah, I think this fight's not going to be, it's not going to go long. I feel like it's either going to be a Derek Lewis first round knockout or a Texeira first round knockout. I think that both of these guys are two of the more dangerous one punch fighters in this division. Texeira's already number 13 in the division, which is crazy after one fight. And I feel like if there's going to be a surprise in this fight, it may be the fact that Derek Lewis has still got the ability to possibly win anywhere near high level, because I do think Texeira is going to be a future top 10, top 5 guy in this division, which isn't saying a lot for the heavyweight division. You can literally just have a pulse and have relatively low body fat and be in the top 10. So it's not really saying much, but I do think that'd be the only surprise here if Derek Lewis did get that knockout, because even though we know if it is going to be a victory either way, it's going to be a first round knockout. I feel like it'd be surprising if Derek Lewis pulled it off at this point, because he did look less dangerous in his recent performances. He did also look slower, which I feel like Derek Lewis, he was always a bit sloppy, but he did have that really explosive one punch hitter quitter. I feel like if he lands that in here, it could really blow the roof off the place. Obviously, it's near to his home as well. But I'm going with Texeira here. No real fireworks here, no real surprises. I just think it's going to be the younger, more hungry, more explosive guy at this point even. I know no one would ever think you'd pick anyone for explosivity over Derek Lewis, but back in this day and age, I think he's just not got the same pop, he's not got the same danger level, and he's not got the same craftiness, I don't think, because he's not got the speed to land that shot. I feel like if he lands one, it'll be like when he landed one on Pavlovich, and then Pavlovich was able to take it because it wasn't quite as effective because of the loss of speed. I feel like we haven't seen Derek Lewis really knock out anyone high level since probably going back years ago. You know, he's not really finished anyone, apart from probably that fight he had where he said my balls were hot, as I mentioned earlier. That was probably the last time he finished anyone impressively, and that was a year or two ago now. So I think he's going to get beat here in the first round, probably get KO'd. Like, I can see it being a really brutal one, because I think Lewis tends to, when you get older and you're that kind of chubby build, it always seems to be comical when you get knocked out. Like, you can see the ripple. It's a bit like when Tyson Fury got hit by Wilder and you saw the full belly ripple. I feel like it's going to be one of those finishes where we're going to be memeing him. Could be like an Anthony Smith, Khalil Roundtree level meme. I can see Derek Lewis dancing and flopping around like fucking Chris Barnett. But I think he's going to get finished early. I think it's going to be a pretty simple heavyweight, one round, funny, memeable finish, and then it's going to be probably the GOAT, Shamil Gaziev, taking on the legend of Texeira next. And I think that's going to be probably the next Shitty Fight Night main event we've got to look forward to. So yeah, Derek Lewis is getting KO'd here, and I think it's going to be probably one of the last times we see him in a Fight Night main event, unfortunately, because we all loved Derek Lewis versus Jailton Almeida. How upsetting will that be that we never get to see that type of excitement again? Thanks, guys. Thanks for viewing. I'm a fan of Derek, though, so I don't think I'm just mocking him. My balls are hot. He's always going to be the greatest post-fight interview in Apex history. So thank you, guys, for watching. I'll see you in the next one, and like and subscribe.